Imagine waking up, checking your bank account, and realizing your life savings are suddenly worth, well, half of what they were yesterday. Sounds like a nightmare, right? Well, in this explainer, we're going to unpack exactly how that nightmare becomes a reality. We're looking at the devastating mechanics of hyperinflation through the incredible case study of a place called Priceland. It's basically a textbook example of just how fast a totally stable economy can completely unravel.
45%. Let that sink in for a second. That massive, staggering number is Priceland's annual inflation rate for 2023. And look, this isn't just a sign of a struggling economy. No, it is a glaring, flashing red flag of absolute economic catastrophe.
Section 1. Welcome to Priceland. From stable to spiraling. Now, you might be thinking Priceland was always in trouble, but actually, scratch that, it really wasn't. Just 5 years ago, this was a promising, highly stable, middle-income country home to 12 million people. So the big question is, how did a nation with such a solid foundation fall so far, so fast? Section 2. The root causes. Following the money. So what actually triggered this whole mess? Well, it started with good intentions, but man, the execution was disastrous. The government was desperate to fund new infrastructure and welfare programs, but, and here's the catch, they didn't want to raise taxes. So what did they do? They just instructed the central bank to print vast quantities of money. It probably felt like a quick fix at the time, but the money supply absolutely exploded, growing way, way beyond the actual output of the real economy. And boom, severe demand pull inflation takes hold. It all really boils down to this one classic economic trap. Too much money chasing too few goods. Think about it. When everyone suddenly has this massive pile of freshly printed cash, but the actual number of, say, washing machines or groceries on the shelf stays exactly the same, well, the price of those goods literally has nowhere to go but up.
Section 3. Tracking the collapse. The numbers tell the story.
You can really see how the severity of this crisis builds exponentially. Back in 2021, inflation sat in an uncomfortable, sure, but generally manageable 8%. But then, look at this. It nearly tripled the very next year to 22%. And by 2023, it just exploded to that crippling 45% we talked about. At this point, Priceland has officially entered the terrifying territory of hyperinflation. We're not just talking about prices rising a bit every year anymore. We're talking about a crisis where prices are doubling every single few weeks. The currency rapidly loses its real value, and you end up with a total devastating loss of purchasing power.
Section 4. The human impact. Surviving the crisis.
Because as stark as those macro numbers are, they really don't capture the daily reality on the ground. Everyday survival becomes a literal race against the currency. Imagine this. A basic loaf of bread that cost 50 Pricelandian dollars in January spiked to $120 by December. It gets so absurd that shopkeepers are frantically updating their price tags multiple times a day. Sometimes they're changing the price while you're standing right there in the aisle. Families literally have to queue outside bakeries at the crack of dawn, knowing that by the afternoon their cash might be completely worthless. And if we put ourselves in the shoes of, say, a retired teacher, the devastation is absolute. Hyperinflation just brutally punishes ordinary savers. Decades of life savings, gone. They just evaporate in a matter of months. A pension that was designed to provide a modest, comfortable retirement, now it barely covers 2 weeks of groceries. It's heartbreaking. And workers, they are equally trapped. Employees are forced to demand these impossible constant wage increases just to keep their heads above water. But businesses, who can't even plan a few weeks into the future, simply cannot afford to pay them. The whole economy just becomes paralyzed by absolute desperation. Ultimately, confidence in the Pricelandian dollar has collapsed so completely that citizens are just abandoning it altogether. People start hoarding US dollars, gold, or, astonishingly, they actually return to a primitive barter system. You literally have situations where a mechanic fixes a teacher's car not for cash, but in exchange for a basket of vegetables from her garden. The money has completely lost its basic function. Section 5. The macro collapse, capital flight, and empty shelves. And this local lack of confidence, it is totally mirrored on a massive international scale. The broader economy is just rapidly shrinking. GDP growth plunged from a pretty healthy 3% in 2021 all the way down to negative 2% by 2023. While unemployment ticked up to 7%. And here's the wild paradox. This economic contraction is happening despite the massive influx of printed cash. Why? Because businesses simply cannot plan, invest, or operate in such an insanely volatile environment. This triggers a absolutely devastating chain reaction known as capital flight. Foreign investors look at the chaos and just flee the country, instantly draining Priceland's foreign exchange reserves. And without those foreign dollars, Priceland literally cannot buy necessities from the rest of the world. No fuel, no medicines, no raw materials. The factories just sit idle, and the supermarket shelves stripped completely bare. Section 6. The policy crossroads. No easy answers. So, Priceland now stands at a critical juncture, facing some major international pressure. The government has to choose between two totally agonizing paths. Policy A, which means strict monetary restraint, or Policy B, which relies on heavy price controls and rationing. And spoiler alert, neither option is painless. Let's look at Policy A first, monetary restraint. This means literally stopping the printing presses immediately, enforcing strict central bank independence, and committing to low money supply growth. It's essentially accepting a very bitter pill of short-term economic pain and austerity. It's going to hurt, for sure, but it is explicitly designed to finally restore long-term stability to the currency. On the flip side, Policy B offers price controls and rationing. This approach tries to shield the most vulnerable citizens by artificially freezing prices on essential goods and rationing supplies to make sure things stay affordable. The government steps in to manage distribution and prevent severe market shortages. But this requires massive government oversight, and honestly, it risks creating huge black markets. Both of these paths carry incredibly steep human and economic costs. There's just no easy way out. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with this one question to think about. If you were the one tasked with saving Priceland, knowing the immense suffering either choice brings, which policy would you choose to save the nation?